Welcome to the Apex Sunday podcast hosted by myself, Robert Ross, and John Dowsett. And John, just as the Italian Grand Prix is about to start, which is always a very good race, and we really love the Mugello circuit. So I'm really looking forward to that, particularly if Marquez is finally accepted by the Italians because he's riding for Ducati now. But anyways, before that, let's take a look back to the Aragon Grand Prix, where again Marc was expected to win, and he topped every single session, every practice session, every qualifying session,
Yep.
every session. So that was interesting to watch. And interesting afterwards, he said to the press that was a mandatory performance or a mandatory result due to his crashes in the other races. And apparently his adjustment is now to wait a bit longer before the rear tire gets worn out enough so that it slides a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he's a bit more comfortable riding the bike. So I thought such a dominant performance this week or that weekend that just that the expectation was there, and to have all that pressure on you and then to hear him say, well, that was mandatory. That must be part of why certain people win over and over again, because they just have unbelievable confidence.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's. I think it was more relief than anything. In his head, he's probably thinking that he had the ability to win it. Of course he does. Of course he believes he's the best racer. Why wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to race if you don't feel that. But he is. Like, he's just phenomenal. You put somebody on the same bike as him and watch them not perform to the same level.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Not instantly anyway.
No, but having said that, in qualifying, he really had to earn it. And he had this sort of his Villeneuve type of riding in qualifying, where he's even making small mistakes going left to right and still sets the fastest lap, but only by a couple of tenths from Alex, who once again is always there and always at the top, like very close to Marc, and out qualifying Pecco. What was it? Morbidelli, I believe, was third, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And then Bagnaia was fourth, with the KTMs of Acosta and Binder finishing up the second row of the grid. So it was interesting to see the KTMs in the top 10 this time, whereas the last race, they were absolutely nowhere. And we have this kind of flipping going on where Zarco, for example, was doing so well last race. This race, he was nowhere. It's quite interesting.
But the one thing we expected, which was, if you're on a Ducati, you're not going to win.
Yeah.
If you're not on a Ducati, you're not going to be anywhere near up front. It's completely changed this year. I mean, we've had Yamaha, we've had Honda, we've had all of them turn in some pretty stellar performances. The question is, can they keep it going? Can they last a full race?
Yeah, as well as there seems to be, at least for certain bikes, some track dependence where.
Yes.
I don't know, is that the wrong word, but
no,
certain tracks suit them.
They do better on some tracks than others. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is that something that you experienced when you were racing?
Yeah.
Or were you just a master of every circuit you raced?
No, no. I wasn't good on technical tracks. Still
Oh,
not good on
really?
technical tracks. Yeah.
So
Flat
it's
tracks
rhythm.
with flat tracks with lots of S's and twisty bits.
Right, right.
I like the blind corner that you think you're going to die if you do it how you need to do it.
Right.
And it's just thrilling and wonderful.
Yeah.
Come flying up to a corner, tap the brakes before you see the corner and turn in and ride it out. And
Yeah.
getting to that stage, and then rhythm tracks. I love rhythm tracks.
Right. Right. Well, it's like this Aragon circuit is quite interesting. It's somewhat flat, but and then Mugello is a very good circuit. But the other thing was Bez was crashed out and
Mm-hmm.
resulted in a bad qualifying position, and so he had to work his way back once again. But he did work his way back in both the sprint and the race. But costly mistake there. But again, it's great to see Marc in Villeneuve mode to pull out that qualifying lap. Watched it on the onboard as well, which is very interesting. And again, great result from Alex being so close to him, 2/10. Whereas last year, I think it was almost 8/10 that Marc got the pole position by. So over one lap, Alex can be very close to him. On this circuit, pretty clear Marc was going to be faster than everyone, and that's what happened. So we saw that in qualifying as well.
You do get the question of whether he can maintain it though, and whether he's being on that ragged edge, whether he's going to go over it.
Yeah, I did think it was a bit interesting to see him do that in qualifying when being second, third, fourth, fifth would have been irrelevant to him in the race.
Yeah.
So why risk crashing and hurting yourself or damaging the bike and so forth? But that's Marc is Marc, right? So he's just going to be.
He's going to do
I
it.
mean, I remember he's been this way his entire motorcycle life, as far as I've seen. So, where yes, there are some races where he tones it down, but when he thinks and wants pole position or the win, he'll try to get it, and that's what we saw here. And
But doesn't he always does that?
yeah,
Yeah.
So great to see. Then we go to the sprint. We had not a great start from Marc. And this is again an example of waiting till his rear tires were more slidey before he started working his way through to the front. So I said that he was Villeneuve-like in the qualifying, but in the sprint and the race, as you mentioned, he has a Jim Clark type quality to him, where he
Yeah.
was very measured in the race and just, I'm going to make my way to the front. I'm going to be at the front. And I'm going to win the sprint and the race. So,
Yep.
Pecco falling back hugely in the sprint, back to 12th. We're used to seeing that, but I didn't expect to see him fall back that much. Really like the Acosta Aldeguer battle.
Why do you think he did that? Why do you think he fell
Pecco?
back so much? Yeah.
Again, when
I
he
mean,
loses total confidence in the bike, and he said he couldn't feel the front end, and he's sliding all over the place. So I just take him at his word, I guess. He just loses all confidence in it, and so we see how he transformed in the race. But he's definitely one of these riders that when his bike isn't to his liking, he can adapt. And he even said in the press something about, I've learned that I need to adapt to the bike, and I have the master of doing that beside me in the pit box
But don't you
because
think at his level he should have done that by now?
well, that's the thing with when you're at this level. E- Even champions do this. It seems like it just
Hmm.
seems that the very, very, very top ones don't seem to do it. I mean, look at Mika Hakkinen almost falling apart just before his championships, and then once he was exhausted from winning two championships, he basically had a season of giving up. Um, but that's not what Pecco's going through, obviously. But I don't know. What do you think?
Uh, I just think at that level, I mean, it's time to get rid of him. I mean, he's a multi-world champion, is he not?
Yeah, two
Uh,
times. Yeah.
so I think he's just over. He's lost it. It's time to get rid of him.
Do
No,
you?
I know, seriously. You know, if you can't adapt, and if you can't, move around, I think one of the gifts of the young guns is they're willing to do anything.
Mm.
And you're going to throw me on a new machine that it's basically like a whole new venue. It's a whole new world, and you just have to uh, put your head down and do it. Um, and if that means crashing to figure out where the limits are, then crash to find out where the limits are. It's that simple. And he's not willing to do that. So it's time to get rid of him.
Well, I always say that historically, the last time Ducati got rid of a multi-world champion for basically the same reasons that multi-world champion started winning all the time on the Ducati, and Ducati wanted him back, but he went to Honda instead, and
Right.
then Marc destroyed him, and that was the end of his career. But I don't know. For motorcycle racing, it seems to be a little different, where adaptation, even for the very top guys, can take a long time. This was a question I had when Marc was moving from Honda to Ducati. People talk about him adapting for 6 months, and I thought, yeah, no, he adapted a lot quicker than that. He may have optimized himself after 6 months, but from what I've seen from other world champions and non champions, but race winners moving, like look at Bez. Uh, he's just started to be winning on the Aprilia, and Enea Bastianini is absolutely nowhere on the KTM. He was winning races last season, so it's it is a little bit astounding to me how different the bikes apparently can be. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the news of Superbike World Champion Toprak coming to MotoGP. Um, but anyways, in the race, Pecco is a totally different story, so that was interesting. And back to the sprint, Bez, he fought back for points. Morbidelli Acosta had a great battle. Reminded me of the Kimi Piastri battle in Canada, where you think Morbidelli was just going to be taken over by Acosta, but he managed to keep ahead. And it was nice to see Kimi Antonelli on the podium in Canada. And once again, in the sprint, Grassini with two riders on the podium in Alex and Fermin. So with Marc at the top, I thought it was another great sprint. What did you think of the sprint?
Yeah. Yeah. It was a great race. There was no pause in the action. There was always
Mm-hmm.
something there, and good coverage too.
Yeah, we saw those great battles. So it was nice. So getting to the race, Marc, great start.
Great start.
End of story.
Yeah.
basically, to keep ahead. Of course, like we said before, this quote effortlessly is not effortless whatsoever. There's still a lot of effort to keep ahead. Alex, I thought, kept him honest for quite a while until Mark
Hmm.
decided to get a little bit further ahead, doing fastest laps towards the end of the race. Um, Mostly, I think maybe the track was more rubbering in more and more as well throughout the weekend. But the story of the race for me was the Pecco changing from the 340 to 355 millimeter front brake discs. Apparently, changed his whole confidence at the front end, and that's why he finished in third place. Couldn't quite keep up with Alex, but again, another great performance from Alex. And Pecco, shockingly, after what he did in the sprint back to 12th, had a great race. Had a battle with Acosta, and just again never be able to get past Alex. And we saw that Aldeguer Morbidelli battle was great for fifth place. So great battles for Morbidelli in both. And like I said, Marc said the result was mandatory, but
Well, it's good to see. It's good to see that Alex is not was not daunted by previous crashes. It was all because it almost looked to me like he'd gone over the edge, and now he's kind of he's getting faster and faster and faster. Now he's had enough. He can't do it anymore. He's just he's anyway. That's sort of what it sort of looked like to me. Is he'll do anything to stay up with his brother or beat his brother, and next thing you know, he's just gone too far. Can he dial it back? And the answer to that is yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think once you realize your crash risk is very high to try to keep up with them, you'd have to do the sensible thing, especially in motorcycle racing, where I guess you could say it's the same in car racing, where crashing, if you go over the edge, is quite easy. But it just seems to me there's more crashes at the top of motorcycle racing where they just suddenly
Oh,
lose it. And,
by a mile.
that just, yeah. So if you can't dial it back, you're never going to be a successful motorcycle racer unless you're like Marc, who, even when you don't dial it back, you don't usually crash during the races. So
Well,
good
I
on
think
Marc for doing that.
I think it's pretty simple with Marc in that he's got such a feel that he's better at finding that edge, better at finding that
Mm-hmm.
that getting close to the edge. Um, how close can you get to that 100% mark? And and that there's that little range of going over. And it's just like car racing. If you ride at 100%, you can ride at 100%, but you're going to be going over to 102% every now and again, and you're going to be scrubbing off
Yeah.
speed. And then you
Yeah.
go to 105% and you're down.
Yeah.
And he seems to be able to find that 102 and dial it back to 100%, sort of.
Yeah. Is that what makes him like a Jim Clark in that way, or
I think so. I think
because he
so.
can
It's just a
control
more
his
finite,
pace?
control at the limit.
Yeah. Yeah. What was Senna like then in that respect?
Well, Senna was the same. Senna was a maniac. I mean,
Yeah.
Senna would try all kinds of bizarre things. I think it was you that showed me the video of his technique of going around corners where he'd be flipping the throttle through a corner. That makes
Yeah.
absolutely no sense at all. No, it makes no sense. What would lead you to believe that this is a way that you're going to get around a corner faster? It makes no sense, but it worked
Yeah.
anyway. So
Yeah.
what am I willing to do to find that little piece of traction?
Yeah.
Um, the line is the line. Um,
Yeah.
it's not very likely you're going to find a faster line than the line, but he did it. So
It's both of them getting the equipment that they have to that line more consistently than anyone else can. Because, Senna may not like, yes, there were some years when the McLaren was absolutely the best, but even when he was racing for Lotus, or what was the pre Benetton team called again? I can't
oh,
recall.
isn't that awful? Zach Speed or something bizarre. I can't remember
But
what he's got.
anyways, we saw his, like, especially in the rain, his potential, and you know just that ability, again, the adaptation to find a way to get the most speed out of your car or bike so that you can be close to or near to the top as you possibly can.
I
And
think
then when
why
you get onto
Senna was so loud. Senna. I
Mhm.
think why Senna was so loved is because he was a cross between Nicky Lauda, which is or the professor, being an incredible technician, um, and at the same time having a little dash of Villeneuve thrown in there, saying, "Bah, if I go off, I go off."
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, once both of these type of guys get on the best equipment or near the best equipment, it's usually game over for most everyone else. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah. So, for the rider of the race, I'm going to give it to, well, of the event, I guess I'm going to give it to Mark just because he dominated. And people didn't said the race is kind of boring. I mean, at the top, it didn't change too much, but we had that Aldeguer Morbidelli battle for fifth. Good coverage. The race wasn't the greatest for sure, but I thought it was okay. So, in terms of the event, I'll give it a seven. What about yourself?
Mm. I, I'll go to an 8, and I'll go to an 8 because well, it could be really boring to some. If you're a true fan, to watch the masters at work,
Yeah.
watching them breaking into a corner so hard that their rear tires off the ground, and yet they're still turning on one wheel. They're basically on a unicycle. And same thing coming out of the corners with the front end off the ground, and they're still turning the bike. They're still rotating the bike. So they've started the rotation of the bike, and then they can crack the throttle enough that it's going to stay on that path on the rear wheel. If they keep the bike on that same angle, it's going to continue to go that way. If they were to lift it this way, or go one way or the other, it's gone.
Mm.
And there's no thought to it. They just do it. So yeah, I didn't need to see passes because there was good enough footage of watching these guys on bikes. It just is,
Yeah.
yeah, staggering, staggering. It's a freak show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Ryder.
I can't really give a rider. You can say Mark, but Mark's Mark. It's and then I
Yeah.
look down the field, and you can say that Morbidelli, Acosta being that high,
Yeah.
uh,
Great races.
great even Mir. There's
Oh,
actually
yeah. Yeah.
there's all kinds of great great performances.
Mhm.
You can sort of cry about Rins or Miller, or the guy Binder not finishing, but
Yeah.
you know
Yamaha was nowhere this race.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't I don't I don't think that I can actually give. I think I'm going to pass on rider
Okay.
of the event.
Okay. I will say that, yeah, this whole event, like qualifying, uh, to sprint the race, I watched some of the practice for once. It was practice one, and Fabio Quartararo was just bombing the bike through corners, trying to get as much speed out, and then we lose it all the time. And he was just so frustrated, and eventually he adjusted and made it into Q2 automatically. But the Yamahas just were not built for this race circuit for some reason, and that ended Fabio's top qualifying runs. But yeah, just seeing the whole event, the bikes seemed to be, yeah, the way they were using them seemed to be like they're always on the verge of crashing. It was quite amazing to
which,
watch.
which didn't make a lot of sense to me. It's no, seriously, there was a little bit of hillbilly riding in some cases in that it's really simple. It's really simple. The longer that you can make the straight, in other words,
Mm.
the earlier you can exit from a corner, the faster exponentially you're going to be at the end of the straight, and
Yeah.
that's how you're going to win a race. Period. Finished. That's what it's about. Now, can you brake later? All these bikes weigh about the same. This isn't like car racing. All these bikes weigh about the same, and all the riders weigh pretty much the same.
Mm.
So your braking points are going to be the same. Your turn-in points are going to be the same. Your exit's going to be the same, unless you can find a way to exit earlier. So is that another reason why Marc's kicking butt? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. The braking, I just don't quite understand. Like they say there are late breakers, so braking later than the others,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be Pecco, Marc. Yeah, that's all that comes to mind offhand. But anyways, yeah, it's to brake on a bike when you're going that fast, and yeah, you see the rear come up a little bit and so forth, and I don't know, it's just astounding kind of ability. But what are your thoughts on Pecco getting a bigger brake disc and suddenly feeling so much better on the front end? I know that, or I've heard that small adjustments can make a huge difference. I don't know if you ever experienced that yourself, but what are your thoughts on that?
That's what it's all about. That's
Hmm.
what it's all about. It's getting it close and then fine tuning and
Right.
a bigger brake disc. Well, it's going to give you more stopping power, so that means you don't have to put as much pressure on the disc to stop. Probably providing more braking feel. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not going to give you any more traction feel, I don't believe, but maybe it does.
It's just funny that so people are saying, "Oh, how could how could they not think of this?" But once it's thought of, it's always easy to say, "How could it not be thought of?" Right? So
Yeah.
um, it's just one of those things that if you're honest with yourself, in every profession that I know of, there's a sort of a tunnel vision that happens, and sometimes you're just going to miss things like this because you're thinking these are the issues, and the brake disc size that can't possibly be the issue. It's shoved aside until it's tried, then it works, and everyone's surprised. I mean, it doesn't shade their professionalism or anything. It's just one of those examples of what can happen in motor racing and in any kind of mechanical thing. So
And God knows what it is, right? I mean, one of the huge things that you want to save weight on is unsprung weight.
mhm,
Uh, and so now a disc is
it is
uh,
heavier.
sprung weight.
Yeah.
This is going to give it more gyroscopic effect on the front wheel. It
Hmm.
could be that the extra weight. I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a trade off, the extra weight, but if he has more confidence in the corners, it means he can brake further. And so it worked in the race, it seems. So
Hmm.
we'll see how it goes. I mean, again, we've only seen this work in one race at one circuit where, you know, the last circuit, the Yamahas were there. They were nowhere near. The KTMs were nowhere. Now they're up there. So, it's all over the place. But so going back to kind of what you were talking about with the bikes being uh, relatively the same weight and so forth, they're heavy bikes for sure. Um, they have close to 300 horsepower, very, very stiff. And so we're having Toprak Razgatlioglu coming over from Superbike next year to Pramac Yamaha for the 26 season, and then presumably for the new rules in the 2027 season, where MotoGP will be on Pirelli tires, and Michelin, coincidentally, is going to Superbike. Oh, they're just flopped over, as you
Right.
see sometimes with sponsorship stuff. But there's been anyone from Superbike, the world champions that have come from the Superbike world champions that have come to MotoGP, they only have 2 wins between them. And Cal Crutchlow, who wasn't a champion, but he was a super sport champion, then he was a Superbike rider. I think he won 2 or 3 races, but he wanted to come to the world championship. He came to Yamaha, or Tech Trois at the time, and he won 3 races throughout his career. Great races. He had a lot of great podiums and great races. So I definitely miss him as a rider. But the success rate is, let's say, not great coming from Superbike to MotoGP. Going the other way, uh, it's not that every MotoGP rider is
Hmm.
instantly great, but some that weren't champions or never even won a race are champions in Superbike. And some that were close to champions in MotoGP became champions in Superbike. So there's an obvious difference between the Superbikes and the prototypes that MotoGP has. Now, of course, to to people like you and I, a Superbike is not a normal bike.
By
It's
any means.
still, yeah, I mean, it's a crazy bike. It's street legal, but I think they start at like they range from 40 to $70,000 brand new. So they're a very, uh, let's say, uncommon bike. I've never seen one on the road
Hmm.
ever. And then I know that they do go down in value uh, when they're not brand new. But their performance is quite amazing, and the modern ones are even better than before. But apparently, they're still a lot softer, and so you can race them with a lot more feel and a lot more flexibility in the bike and so forth. And so when they make the switch over to a very, very stiff bike, um, apparently that's a big, big change. Um, I, I don't know enough about bikes. I can't. The only thing I can say about cars is when I've been in a car that is made for racing, the 2 things I notice. Well, let's. I won't put numbers on them, but I'll say first thing I notice is the height of the car is very low to the ground, which is for obvious reasons, low center of gravity and so forth. The second is the acceleration is phenomenal.
Hmm.
And then the third is the brakes are phenomenal, um, just phenomenal. you do notice the stiffness, but you expect that coming from like a street car. I don't know what. Um,
It's
like I've
really
never
simple.
been.
It's
Yeah,
really simple. The stiffness provides 100% feel. The stiffer it is, the more you feel the pavement. Now,
yeah,
it's different in a car than it is on a bike. On
yeah.
in a How different, I don't know, but I do know that strapped into a car in a seat that is bolted into a frame that is welded to the tube chassis or welded to the monocoque of
Mm,
the race car,
yeah,
and a stiff suspension, you can literally feel driving over um, a dollar coin or a $2 coin.
yeah,
You can feel driving over a tuning. It's that
yeah,
stiff. As soon as
yeah.
it gets wet, it takes that level of or little band of cornering at the limit, and it makes it like this. It just tightens it right up,
Yeah,
making it almost impossible to drive. Um, that same thing is what you're talking about with bikes, because if you've
right.
got a really, really, really stiff bike, you're going to feel everything. You're going to feel everything through those handlebars and through your butt. When something starts losing traction, not even sliding. It's not even visible. If you have a camera on it, but you can feel it.
Right.
You can feel it. As soon as that suspension gets softer, you can't feel it as much. So what does
But
that mean? It also means that the cornering ability of that bike is less as well.
is it the warning too, like on the super bike with the softer suspension? If you're going to lose it, you start to feel it in the suspension first, or do you lose it in the tire anyway? So the
You aren't
feedback.
going to feel it as clearly as you will with a MotoGP bike, a
Right.
super
Right.
bike. You aren't going to feel it as well, and it's not going to have the same cornering ability because it's not as stiff. So if you think about a frame moving and you're trying to corner, you're gonna.
Yeah.
I'm exaggerating it when I do this on a bike, but that is what
Yeah.
it's doing. Even
Yeah.
the MotoGP bikes are doing that. Even their frames
Yeah.
are moving.
Of
Um,
course. Yeah.
but when it's doing that, it's losing traction and it's not as stiff, so it cannot stick as much as
Mm.
MotoGP bike. I mean, you put the two on the track, and the MotoGP bike's just going to make it look like a tricycle, isn't it?
So, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how Toprak adjusts then, because the thing with him is that he's took Yamaha to a championship what and broke Jonathan Ray's consecutive 6 championships on the Kawasaki, and then he went to BMW, who's never won a championship in Superbike, and he wins the championship. So he's definitely an extraordinary rider. It's going to be interesting to see how he adapts and who's going to be the rider out. I think it's going to be Miguel Oliveira, who, when he was at KTM, he won 5 races, and then he got injured when he was at Aprilia. Then he got injured again this year. Just terrible, terrible luck, and he's just not adapting to the Yamaha as well as he could. So we'll see who. And some people say maybe Jack will be out as well, and he might go to Superbike, and they'll get a Moto 2 guy up. But anyways, he's coming to Pramac next season. And the last thing is the Jorge Martin situation with Aprilia. In his last Moto 2 season, he was with KTM, and they were going to promote him up to MotoGP on the KTM. But in his contract, it said if the KTM isn't in the top whatever of the championship by June something that he was free to look elsewhere and not go to KTM.
Mm-hmm.
So he activated that. The problem is that was the year of COVID. So there were no races until after that date.
Right.
So technically correct, but how would you respond to that?
I don't know. I really have no comment. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, what a crappy turn of events he's had to deal with, right?
Yeah, but to again do the same thing where it's like if I'm not whatever top 3 or something in the championship by this date, then I can look elsewhere when he's been injured. So of course he's not in the top 3 of the championship.
Right.
So I don't know. It just, I mean, I've seen two sides of this story. I know, for instance, with Marc going to Ducati and the crew saying he admits his mistakes, like they were kind of expecting maybe a prima donna with, I'm so great kind of thing, and he thanks them a lot. Like I said, he thanks him more in the last 2 weeks or in the first 2 weeks than the last rider did in the last 2 years, referring to Enea. So
Mm-hmm.
Marc has this team building ability based on um, not being like a big, huge hierarchy, just being a group, uh, each taking their own responsibility, including himself. And so it has a more joyous atmosphere, especially since you're winning all the time. But then to have a rider come into your garage who says, I want out before I've even ridden the bike that well, who uses this clause again in a way he's done before to get out of the KTM contract, where he went to Ducati with Pramac. And then when his demands to go to the factory were denied, he goes to Aprilia. And then he's already wants out of Aprilia. So what kind of atmosphere does that create in the garage? And to me,
Excuse me.
I have no idea if that matters at this top level. I mean, at the bottom level, people would take this quite personally, I would think, and think, well, this guy, is he really behind us all? Is he really putting it all on the line if he's going to leave us? I don't know. But then I've seen things like in Formula One where basically Alonso was aware of the Ferrari passing of the secret, some sort of passing of Ferrari secrets to McLaren.
Right.
But then a few years later, Ferrari signs Alonso. So, like, is it only performance ultimately that matters once you get into the garage? I just wonder about the atmosphere it creates and sort of the trust that it might create or not create in the garage. I have no idea.
No, I don't think we can. I don't think that we can.
Yeah.
I think that they're going to want to win no matter where they are, and if they can't work with the engineers and they can't develop a winning machine, then they should leave. Possibly do another ride that is in the exact same position. No, seriously. I mean, look at there's only usually 2 teams that can be up front.
Yeah.
Maybe 3. And the rest are just back markers. They're rolling chicanes. That's all they are.
Yeah. Yeah. So the
It's
rumors to Honda. Um, Honda's a bit of a mystery. I'm a Mir fan. That's how I got into MotoGP when I saw him in Moto3. So it was nice to see him do well. The race obviously got punted out by Jack in the sprint. But I know he's been crashing a lot, but they say he's very aggressive rider. So when I heard that, he doesn't look aggressive to me when he's on the road, but apparently they say, yeah, he's very, very aggressive. So perhaps that wasn't the style. Again, maybe it didn't adapt the style correctly, but now that it's working a bit better, it's working out for him. I don't know, but be nice to see Honda and Yamaha up there again. But my money would be on Honda because they have more cashola than everyone else. And it may not give you championships, but it gives you development speed and ability to get close to a championship as possible. So I can see why Martin would be appealing to them from what he did last season. But if I was a mechanic, I'd be like, yeah, I won't be trusting this guy. But anyways, looking forward to Italy next. Again, Mugello is such a great circuit, and hopefully we have a great race and a great sprint. One of my favorite races is the 2019 Mugello Italian Grand Prix, won by Danilo Petrucci on the Ducati. Was close behind him was Marc and Dovi on the Ducati as well. Marc on the Honda, great race.
We'll
Anyways,
have to watch it.
Yeah, we'll talk about Italy next. Talk to you soon, John. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.